I like to learn about people and cultures and experiences and journeys, and more often than not, you find a common ground. Why should we be taxed as a business for employing people?
You said, the best way to manage payroll taxes or move it to the feds. And what do you think is a scenario or hypothetical scenario to be created for that to happen?
Sure. So the recommendations that were put forward were increase the rate of GST, one, change the GST mix. So there's obviously GST free or exempt goods and services.
Are you using AI in your business?
I guess people that would be more exposed to AI than I would be.
How do you see those economic cycles of opening and then closing? And then what are the key indicators which impact them?
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you.
Welcome, Pasquale.
That's it, Pasquale.
Pasquale, perfect. You do a lot of interviews, and we are doing interview of you today.
Yes.
How does it feel?
Look, it feels good. It's interesting to be on the other side.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you know, I've got my own little podcast that I enjoy interviewing people and getting the best out of them. But from time to time, it's good to be on the other side.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for coming over. Could I, before we dive into the whole public policy conversation and your expertise, I would like to know a brief background of yours and the story behind your name.
Sure, of course. So I'm an Italian child. My grandparents migrated here in the late 40s, and my parents were born here in Australia. So my name originates from my grandfather. So typically in Italian culture, it's the firstborn son is named after the father of my father, so my grandfather, and that's how my name originated. So Pasquali Prince is a name that's been handed down generation on generation, and I grew up in a small business background, a family business. So my parents are butchers. We've got a family butcher that is celebrating its 75th year here in Australia, in Western Australia specifically this year, and so I grew up working in the shop, working behind the till and the counter, and went through, very fortunate to go through a private school education at Aquinas College. And out of that, I had a pretty frank and open discussion with Dad. The earliest discussion was year 3. The more prevalent discussion was probably in year 10, where we had to select our courses. And I said to Dad, I'd like to go through and become an accountant.
Yeah.
He wanted me to be a lawyer. I ultimately came out with an accountant as the winning occupation, and studied through university. Was very fortunate. I picked up a job at an international accounting firm at an undergraduate, so part-time work, full-time uni, and in 2016 I started, or was the founding employee of a firm, a JBC corporate back then. In years that are now more recent, I developed and founded CF Financial Group, and we're now based in West Perth, a team of about 40 staff. I've got an office in West Perth, an office in KL, and recently opened an office in Punjab, in India.
Okay. Wow.
So it's been a journey, and I'm probably not your traditional accountant.
I can tell.
Yeah.
I can tell now.
I'd like to think I'm trying to make a bit of a difference here, both in the industry and here in Perth, and really show the next generation of accountants or entrepreneur that business is not easy, but it's about being resilient, and it's about being for purpose, and more importantly, it's about building a legacy. As my parents have built in their industry, in the butcher industry.
Wow. Oh, I don't know where to start there. You've been counting since childhood.
Yeah,
at the till.
Really, at the till.
At the till, you've been counting.
That was my job. I loved counting the cash at night. That was.
And I don't know why would your parents be surprised? Because if you were counting at the till, and then when you say I want to be an accountant,
Yeah.
it's a logical progression from there.
It is. But sometimes, your dad would be the 6th generation butcher. It's quite a difficult pill to swallow when you're what could be the 7th. Fortunately, my cousin Miguel is coming through. But your son is the name of the grandfather that came to Australia to set the butcher up and blah blah blah. When he says they're going to go down a different career path, it's a difficult pill to swallow. So
I can get that.
Yeah.
Wow. I want you to tell me, counting the numbers at till, and as a young boy at the age of 6 or 7 or 10, how that, because you've grown up in a small business, you saw a family who were working hard, how that the work ethic, that is one, and then second, how the practice of being regular, on time, how that determination of discipline came through, and that has helped you in setting up your business and growing and having very different locations, West Perth, KL, and then Punjab. Tell me that narrative or story.
Sure. Yeah. So it probably, for me, I didn't see myself as different. To be absolutely honest, when I came into accounting or into business, but as time has progressed, it's probably become more apparent where what it's probably allowed me to do, truthfully speaking, is probably just be wiser beyond my age. That's probably what it's allowed me to do. So growing up in a family business, around the dinner table at every night, it was always business talk. It was about the day, the week, the month, the issues, the positives, the next chapter in the journey, etc. So what I learnt from my parents, who have had their ups and downs in business, as most do, is the resilience to keep moving forward. And I think the discipline is actually built probably more out of the resilience. So if you can keep pushing forward, that discipline will probably follow suit, and you consistently have to learn from your mistakes. So I think that has allowed me to probably be a bit more advanced, as I said, beyond my age. But in business, it's probably allowed us as a group to consistently push and strive for that next piece or that next chapter in the journey. So, yeah, so that foundation allowed me to excel quite quickly, and I took up a partner role far earlier than most, only because I felt in myself I was determined and ready to make a difference. And through through the traditional accounting journey, you'd build a book and you'd get to 40, 50, 60 years of age, and then you might consider retirement, et cetera, whereas what I'm trying to build, as I said, is a generational business. And to do that, if you limit yourself just to Perth, your exposure is limited, so your ideas become limited. So hence the reason why I jumped on a plane and went to Malaysia. Never been to Malaysia in my life. And went there with our Chief Operation Officer, Henry, and we were on a mission to establish a business in Malaysia to give them an opportunity as well, right? So being in Malaysia, you would never necessarily get exposed to an Australian tax system or a West Australian business, and ultimately it's an opportunity for them to grow as people too. And whilst we've learnt a lot. And it's not necessarily, the best thing since sliced bread, because we're learning. We've never been to Malaysia, don't speak Malay, don't know the Malay culture, etc. That gave me the confidence to start something else. Most would say, let's stop and finesse it and work on it and make sure it's completely perfect. I'm very much so that I think the foundations of the bones are there. It'll come to be what it'll be. Let's get into the next one. So there was a staff member of mine, Tarun, who had expressed an interest in going back home and some form of co-working opportunity. And given that I was always one to be provided opportunities, particularly in business, I said, well, let's do it. So he obviously migrated from Punjab into Perth to do his studies. Tarun has been working for us for a good number of years now, expressed a desire to go back home to set up an office, and I said, when do we start? And off he went. So he's now there in home, setting up the office. He's been there for just about 2 months now, has recruited 4 or 5 staff, and is enjoying the experience of running an operation, right? So for me, it's all back to purpose. And I think my inner purpose is allowing me to really make a difference in other people's lives.
Off the camera, you talked about that skill of going into a room where you know nobody, and then you like to connect with people who you might have not have met in the past, and then that's a difficult skill to inculcate and learn if you don't have that natural extrovertism in you. How has that come to you, and how have you evolved that skill, or how you have finessed the skill of interacting with new audiences?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it obviously started in the shop, right? So every customer, generally speaking, is either a new customer or a return customer. And that's probably where I was able to develop that skill set, that you'd come into the store, I'd learn from my parents, we've never met you before. Because it's a small family business, you would often know that they're new customers. And my parents used to make a concerted effort to go out of their way to welcome you to the store and make sure it was a pleasant experience and give you some free meat or free sausages or whatever to take away. So it left that everlasting impact. So from that upbringing, I've then rolled into this professional world of networking, which to me is, truthfully speaking, no different to a customer of the store or a prospective customer of the store. So yeah, I enjoy getting out and meeting new people because you back to this quadrant that you're never really exposed to these people or things or ideas or who they are and what their story is, and that's what I enjoy. I enjoy to learn about other people and other cultures, as well. I really enjoy that. I've been traveling to China a bit recently as well, and that exposure of obviously I'm the English white guy, as they would say, in the room, and these guys are all conversing, and I can walk away from that and they go, well, we like this guy. That to me is a tick, because I like to learn about people and cultures and experiences and journeys, and more often than not, you find a common ground, you share that, and that's how your relationships evolve. So I that's why I enjoy just getting out. Even yourself, like, let's talk about whatever, whenever you ask me any question, and I'll give you my honest, feedback, and that's what. That's what I enjoy about going into rooms and meeting new people.
Thank you. Tax policies have so much locked into them. And one of the things that is locked into a good tax policy underneath is economic growth, or the opportunity to grow the economy. And a good tax policy can set the next decade or so if done well. I want you to have a look at the back mirror, rear mirror, and give us a view of how have you observed your observation of the tax policy in the last 20 years of the century.
Yeah.
Federally.
Federally. So as I said to you earlier, I've had the privilege of doing my master's recently in tax. So I've had an opportunity just to touch on the surface level of the tax policy. It's one of those. This is my opinion, this is my belief, this is not to discredit any government that has been in power. I think there's been a lack of efficient tax policy for at least the last decade, if not longer. Tax policy should be, presented in a way for economic benefit. So you should be incentivising people to do things, or businesses to do things, which in turn will allow the economy to prosper and we will generate tax revenues. In the last 20 years, I think it's fair to say there's been very little tax policy that has driven economic benefits. And a testament to that is a productivity, which is obviously a big talking point at this point in time, right? So what tax policy is out there generating economic benefit, which in turn is, creating a more productive economy? I don't know very many. There's some policy, I think, like the R&D tax offset. Now, that's obviously a bit longer than the last 10 to 20 years, but there's policy out there that is incentivising innovation. You go out and innovate, we will give you a tax offset, a tax credit to continue the innovation. But more often than not, I've found that tax policy has been purely driven by revenue raising. And whilst it's not policy yet, probably talking about some of the current issues at hand, is the superannuation tax or the wealth tax or whatever you want to glorify it as. And it's not indexed. So yes, it might only affect 1% of the population today, But this tax policy, you'll find, is always put in a way that, but today, what about in 10 years? What about in 20 years? What about in 30 years? And that's the fundamental issue with the tax policy. Sometimes they'll do, increase the rates, for example, the bracket creep. Mm-hmm. We shouldn't have had that issue to begin with had we indexed the tax bracket system. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think there has been any decent policy in the last period of time that I could attest to and go, that's been great. I'm sure there is for others, but in my opinion, for that small business space, there's been very little.
And there is a federal tax and there is a state-based taxes. So, and then people assume, why would there be a state-based tax, or the rationale behind a state-based tax for businesses. What's your view on those taxes? And then if you can also explain a bit about them as well.
Sure. Again, state-based taxes are very, very fascinating. So they were introduced a number of years ago when effectively the federal tax was brought in and the states handed over that taxing right to the feds and then they pushed forward. I'm still struggling to wrap my head around which state-based taxes are driving some form of economic efficiency for the state. And an example of it, which I'm quite vocal about, is payroll tax. So payroll tax was a post-war tax. It was obviously to generate revenue to repair the states and the countries and the like, and the state and the country. Why should we be taxed as a business for employing people? Fundamentally, what benefit is that? What economic efficiency is that bringing to the state? Payroll tax is now one of the largest state-based revenue raisers. That is why they will not get rid of it, because there is no complement or no replacement income that the state would be able to generate to fill that void. If I'm not mistaken, in WA, we generated $5 billion in payroll tax revenue. So we're not talking a small amount of money. I don't understand why, as a business, I'm penalised, because that's what it is, it's a penalty, of 5.5% for employing people or wanting to increase wages. And if you want to talk about how to increase productivity and make things more productive, well, I can categorically tell you 80% of our clients, 90% of our clients are hesitant to put people on and to build and create their business, because what's the point of doing it if I'm going to pay more tax? Because that's the mentality. Yeah. Why should I grow? Because all I'm going to do is pay more tax. So I don't understand why, and I'm specifically talking about just payroll tax, but I don't understand why these taxes exist.
And one should see these two things in parallel. The R&D tax is you're being given offset because you're trying new things.
Correct.
And you're trying new things, you're either employing or you're trialing new products and all of that.
Correct.
So when you are growing, you are trying new things. You might want to expand another branch.
Yes.
So the rationale probably how it aligns.
Completely different, right? So you're actually incentivized to innovate, right? Yeah. And there is a solution to state-based taxes, I believe, which is hand them over. Hand them over to the feds, introduce an increased rate of GST, and introduce some form of either federal land tax or federal tax, it's just across the board tax, provide that revenue back to the states, and then we might have some form of efficient tax system, because there's a number of different pillars that how tax policy is obviously put together. But again, if we want to talk about addressing what is the biggest issue in this country, not state, in this country at the moment, it's productivity. The current government in power is talking about reintroducing death taxes and introducing a wealth tax and all these other different ideas which aren't addressing the core issue. There was a productivity...
the roundtable.
The roundtable, right? I don't know if you've read all they were talking about is tax. I'm going, but why? What part of that tax is going to drive or incentivize people to be more productive or to grow? Or we're going to penalise you because you've got too much money in your super. The reason superannuation exists and the reason it's mandatory is so the government doesn't have to pay the pension.
Yeah.
That's why it was introduced, to reduce the government burden to pay people for not working. But now because you've done too well and you've used it as an investment vehicle, we're going to penalise you for that. I'm dumbfounded.
So when you do too well, you get penalised.
Yeah.
If you have to see that example of people who are good savers, they save well and they want to put all the effort and then try to. The example of HECS debt. The people who have saved enough to pay off their HECS debt with time and they just paid off and then realized that 20% of the HECS debt was paid off by the government. So the person who's hardworking versus somebody wants to take the time to pay the HECS debt. And the government plays that role that in the end somebody else is paying for it.
Correct.
The money's coming from somewhere else,
You and I are paying for it.
Yeah,
that's the fact, right? So we work hard, we pay our taxes, we save our money, and then the government will turn around and as you rightly point out, we'll sort this one out, or we won't charge you interest this year. Well, why don't you go back and credit all the other Australians that had paid their HECS back on time? Why is it now that this is the government in power and that's what they're doing and that's all they control? And I think, again, I don't want to get into politics too much, but the issue with politics, it's all about term.
Yeah.
It's not about everlasting impact, right? This is my term. This is what I need to say to get voted in. I'm going to say everything I possibly can. I'll probably only put half of it through and only a quarter of it will probably get legislated, and that's good enough. And that is the issue with most politicians collectively, I think, is that it's all about term. It's not about everlasting impact. It's very rare that you will see any policy that withstands, a number of different governments consecutively. There has been a few, but not very many.
AUKUS is one of them.
Yes.
What are the conditions you said, the best way to manage payroll taxes or move it to the feds? And what do you think is a scenario or hypothetical scenario to be created for that to happen?
Sure. So there's been some...
And what's the politics of moving that to up?
Yeah. So the politics is a whole different can of worms. But there has been some papers written historically around state-based taxes. And they've been written the last 20 years. And the recommendations that were put forward were increase the rate of GST, one, change the GST mix. So there's obviously GST free or exempt goods and services. Yeah. Not all of them, but the bigger proportion of those goods and services to bring them into the taxing fold, and to introduce effectively some form of federal-based land tax or property tax, if you may. So it's a 1% flat rate dependent upon aggregated value of property that is owned by you, and that's just a contribution to the broader country. If you're able to do that, there is more than enough revenue generated in the foreseeable future to completely abolish all state-based taxes that exist, right? That would be an option to move it forward. Then there's a whole other can of worms, which is getting all the states to agree to that. So I don't think it is possible to do it at once. Absolutely, categorically not. But I think with a staged approach over a number of years, with some form of buy-in or mandate as a country, there is an opportunity to do something. And I believe that is and could be a way forward. Is it going to happen? Well, it's highly unlikely, but it may.
There are parts of Western Australia people who are all the time saying that we don't get the fair share of GST. And GST is a very elusive formula, the way it runs and the way it is distributed. I want you to throw the light in terms of, one is explaining the broad rationale of distribution of dollars, because one is contribution and one is recipients. So there are two ways to look at those things. And people always say that, we are the ones who are making roads in Victoria. We are the one. So all those people who, say all the time those things, West Australians, very proud West Australians say those things. But yes, how do you see that conversation? One is the heart and the mind, both sides.
Yeah, so the redistribution of GST, obviously they meet every few years and have a discussion around it. And it's not just about what you contribute, because there is effectively federal government grants that are provided to states as well, which is considered within the distribution. As everyone is well aware, WA at this point in time is contributing the majority to the GST, obviously through a number of different reasons, but equally economically WA is contributing a lot through the royalties that we obviously receive as well. So I don't think there's ever a magic formula, and it's not about what I can and will and should do. I think it should be, and it's probably very left wing of me to say this, but if you would adopt a similar of Elon Musk's Doge analogy, and you'd go, okay, this is the pool of money we've got available. As a state, you present your budget to us. We will consider everybody's budgets and we will make an allocation on what we believe will benefit the country as a whole. Because if you pick a project, for example, Metronet, who's held accountable for the hundreds of millions and billions it goes over budget? Who's held accountable? No one. We just, as taxpayers, it just goes into the folding. And that's where I feel the discussion could be centered around, is a bit of a business piece to it. But it's, if I'm going to give you this money, Dev, to your state, what is it that you're going to contribute to your state and the country, so that we can ensure that dollar goes as far as it possibly can? And if there was an opportunity to reconsider how that would occur, I think that would change everybody's mentality about what I should be entitled to. It should be, what is it that you're going to do for the country?
So you have given me a left-wing solution. Now you give me a right-wing solution, because it has to be balanced in some way or form.
Okay. A more pragmatic avenue.
Okay, so you're saying right-wing is pragmatic.
Well, the current process probably is somewhat flawed, and it's never going to be perfect. Because things change all the time. But again, I still believe if you're to adopt some form of budgetary proposition as to how you're going to use that, independent of what it is that you contribute, then that might be a better solution. And if you are to increase the rate of GST, bear in mind there's obviously a bigger pool of money that becomes available. WA has been an emerging state. Victoria, from what I've been told, there's a lot of people leaving in Victoria. So that was, Sydney and Melbourne, a powerhouse. The mix is now changing. But I think back to the point, we shouldn't run the country as a business, but we're talking about taxes, which is a form of revenue. And we should be adopting some form of business acumen to dealing with that redistribution of the income.
Where do you think the next round of economic growth as a country would come from? Where do you think, beyond mining and then those core services which we have been doing traditionally, how do you, one of the financial planning, 101 is don't have all the eggs in one basket. And how might we as a country to, de-risk ourselves from one industry, but to have a bit more broader scope of economic powerhouse?
It's a good question. So Australia has always been very resource rich. So I think it's very difficult. So the bread and butter of the country, it's very difficult to stray away from that. However, the issue we've always had is we will extract these minerals and products, send it over to somewhere else for them to convert them and bring it back, which to me doesn't make sense. So I feel that if we had a government or people that would incentivize businesses to hold the materials in WA and create, or in the country, and create more jobs in the country, I think that in itself will drive that next phase of economic growth. So I don't think we're an advanced country by any extent. I think there's far more advanced countries out there. As I said, I've recently travelled to China a number of times, and truthfully, if we're not 20 years behind them, I don't know, how close we would be. But if there's a way that we could become more prominent, I think we could make better use of our foundations, which is of our minerals and resources.
One of my economist friend defined us by saying that we are a first world country with a third world economy. As in we produce what a third world produces, like, cattle, dirt. We don't produce very high tech product in proportion of the GDP. If you would see, what Germany would do, what US would do, what France would do. And in very simple language, and unless we could make that economy go up to the first world war to produce a bit more high tech or high grade products, that lifestyle of the first world might become a dream in the future. And there needs to have a strong economic policy, economic growth policy for a country to be put down on the table. And when prime ministers and treasurers should see not just 3 years, they should see 10 and 20 years down the road. I want you to comment on that.
Yeah, again, the view is I'm in power for this period of time, and that's what I'll focus on. And obviously, we've got a Labor government in power at the moment who are pushing their own agenda. And the problematic piece is, well, what is it that they're doing that is going to generate or benefit us for the next 20 years? Labor has always had very similar core principles about policy and budget, and Liberal obviously has a completely different view. I'm not entirely sure what we can or will do to advance ourselves, bearing in mind we are only quite a small country.
Yeah.
So we will never be America, we will never be China, we'll never be India, we'll never be any of these big powerhouse countries. But we need to understand what we've got and where that puts us at the table and how we can make or take advantage of that. Obviously, you've got Donald Trump at the moment, who everyone's got a different view about, but one thing's for sure, he can bring people to a table.
Yeah, he can make a good deal.
Yeah, correct. Correct.
And you were talking about deals before.
Correct. So I feel that we could be more of a powerhouse if we could make some better deals with what we've got available to us. And that might be the solution forward. Is it going to resolve everything? No. Is it diversifying what we've got? Probably not. But at least it'll give us some form of seat at the table. At the moment, you rightly point out, cattle in Australia or agricultural industry in Australia is very large and prominent and will continue to be, whereas in China it's not so much. So why don't we consider maybe going, well, we are very strong and very good at growing cattle, for example, and because China is growing at the rapid rate and because of the way that their economy is heading, food is and will become an issue. Why don't we go, right, well, let's do a deal where we're assuming we've got enough cattle to feed our country and reserves, we'll do a program, the countries will be aligned, it'll be a free trade agreement, it'll incentivise bigger operations here in Australia, more jobs, more people, more of that, because that's what we do. And that might be an opportunity, but again, it's a very loaded question and I probably don't have the answer.
That's fine. I think we are having a good yarn. Are you using AI in your business? And they've been talking about, AI can replace very, very soon a CFO. And what's your experience with AI right now? And what's your observation in terms of the incremental learning and the efficiency of AI as a tool to use?
Sure. I was at an event last night with, people that would be more exposed to AI than I would be. And every time this is their words, not mine. Every time they hear the word AI, it's vomit in the mouth. They're sick of hearing it. It's this buzzword that everyone, AI this, AI that. AI, in my honest and frank opinion, will never replace what it is that we do. It'll assist us, but it'll never replace us, because you still need the prompt and the right prompt for AI or any form of automation to work. You still need a human to tell it what to do. So we are using it a little bit in our business to the extent that other businesses, I wouldn't call ourselves industry leaders by any extent, but it's something that we are and will continue to obviously invest in. And we are seeing it more as a tool for very mundane tasks, so that we can spend more time advising clients and less time doing basic tasks. And all the software, like Xero, for example, has always used AI, if you call it that. It's always had bank feeds or live bank feeds where it communicates, to the bank to drag the data down on a daily basis. That is obviously some form of AI as well. So I don't see it. I don't see it as a threat. I'm very much let's embrace it. And AI is so big and large that it's not just ChatGPT or it's not just an automated task. There is so many different facets of AI that exist. But yeah, I'm all for it, and I think we should be embracing it. And if you're not, well, that's the problem. If you wouldn't say get left behind, but your business's ability to change and evolve will occur at a rate far slower than others.
One of the financial dreams of people is to be, independent and retire early, and as early as you want to. And then everybody has different saving potential and capacity and all of that, and but in terms of your understanding, when people come to you and then when they seek advice, what is the biggest question they ask you? And then how do you take them through the whole conversation of it'll take time and slow, but you need to work on it and all of that. So how do you work with your people who are seeking financial advice from you?
Yeah, so we obviously can't provide financial advice. We're not licensed to do so, but as a role of an accountant, specifically a tax accountant, we do spend a lot of time coaching and seeing what works and doesn't work from our other clients and bringing that IP together. With the subset of client that we focus on, it's a younger demographic that's coming into business. So our advice has always been, it will take time. Rome wasn't built in a day, okay? And the age-old statistic is 76% of businesses fail in the first 5 years due to poor cash flow. Before we even focus on saving, let's just focus on getting the cash flow right. So what I'm taking, obviously it's something that you said earlier, what we always like to think we do is that you need to build wealth outside of your business whilst you're building your business up. You don't want to keep reinvesting year in, year out, every single dollar, every single cent, because that in itself is a risk. It's a risk to your future, your finances and everything else. And if something was to go wrong and all your wealth is in one asset, it doesn't work. So getting a house is challenging as it is. And particularly for the business owners or the younger business owners that are coming through. So we always say, well, let's start with some pretty core assets, and at least your money is going into something that you're not seeing per se. That will build its wealth or build its value, and with that increased value, then we can look at alternatives. But growing up in an Italian family, buying property is always a core, and that is effectively a forced saving, and that's why it makes sense. So when you see the money in the bank, if it's sitting in the bank at the rate of inflation and at the rate of interest it's earning, it's going backwards. So you want your money working for you in an asset that is either a property-based asset that's leased back to the business, or a home, because homes are going crazy, or at least in some form of ETF or fund that is generating a return better than 2% or 3%. So saving is something that needs to occur incrementally. You're not going to save 100 grand in one hit. I'm going to get that one deal and I'm going to put 100. It doesn't work like that. You just have to build a cash flow that allows the savings to build. And when it does build, whilst it's very easy to go and buy that next piece of equipment or to reinvest in the business, we often say, well, maybe let's look at other options. And that's where we would point them to a financial advisor to invest that money for them. Because at the end of the day, you're very good at your job and you're very good in your business. So why don't you let someone else be very good at their job, which is investing your money?
Yeah. Can I ask a bit of a controversial, because when your high net worth clients, they work very closely with you, you become friends and they ask advice and all of that stuff. So have anybody come to you and asking questions like, they probably, have good amount of good running business, good capital, and for them, they're planning to get married. So is that an emotional decision or a financial decision? How do you see that, a marriage?
It's a good question. I've got a pretty interesting view on it, and I need to be mindful in how I put it across. So, marriage is an emotional decision.
Yeah.
Right. You don't go to marry someone because they're going to make you money. It's never been like that, and never should be like that.
Agree.
Right. And it never should be seen as a way that I'm going into this marriage because I'm going to get divorced either. Right. Because I recently had a podcast with a family lawyer and I asked a similar question. He's like, well, how do I protect myself, and do prenups still exist and things like that? If you're going into a marriage concerned or worried about your partner taking half of your wealth or whatever the breakup is, that in itself is a problem. And it's probably an alarm bell that you're getting into the wrong relationship or the wrong marriage. And I see it no different to a business partner, right? So if I'm going into business with someone and I'm going into it worried or questioning their trust or loyalty, then that in itself is a problem. If and when you do get married, and you more often than not probably have a family, it's not as if the money's getting taken away from you. It's ultimately going to end up with your children at some point in time, generally speaking, right? So there's no magical way to protect things. Like family law court sits above any tax, trust, structure, corporate, whatever you want it. It's like, this is the value, this is the pool, this is how we're apportioning it, and this is why we're doing it that way. So, yeah, I think if and when you do go into marriage, you can sign prenups and things like that, because they still exist. I think they're called binding financial agreements or something like that. They still do exist, and for the mega wealthy, they can be enforced. But I think before you get into the relationship or the marriage, maybe first question if that's coming across your head, if you're getting to bed with the right person.
It's a good conversation to have. In terms of broad small businesses, because that's the largest number of businesses in WA in terms of the numbers. And then you see a lot of business opening and closing at the same time. And how do you see those economic cycles of opening and then closing? And then what are the key indicators or levers which impact them?
Yeah. Businesses open and close every day of the week, and insolvencies have been at record highs for a number of years. Initially, it was a post-COVID hangover. Now it's tough because people aren't spending money or wages or rents or whatever. But I think back to probably something I touched on earlier about cash flow. If you have a business plan, which many don't, and I believe the theory is that 80% of businesses have a business plan. 80% of businesses don't have a business plan. For the 20% that do, only 20% of them review them regularly. Okay, so it's a minority of a minority that actually have a plan.
Yeah.
And I've said this a few times on my podcast, but failing to plan is planning to fail.
Yeah.
Okay, so no one goes into businesses to fail.
Yeah.
But most do, statistically, right? And here in WA, I think we're still very much in a strong cycle, a strong economic cycle, where there are a lot of businesses that are making a lot of money. But I also think there's a lot of business owners that are making very poor decisions with that money. And that is where the issue becomes, is that you're consistently focused on this optimistic grow, reinvest, buy, and very little debt is getting paid down. That's where it comes unstuck, is when it does change or your margins change or whatever, you've overspent, you've overcapitalised, you've got too big of a cafe or too big of a bar, and that's where the issue is that the sound investment or financial decision doesn't probably align with the business plan because they don't have one. Or it's no longer relatable. Well, if it's not, let's bring it out. Let's review it again. So, and it's, oh, well, why do I need to do a SWOT analysis? Why do I need to do this? Why do I need to do that? Well, what's the point of getting up every day and thinking you're doing the right thing when the chance is you're probably not? Or making the right decision, the chance is it's probably not the right decision. So that's where I think a lot of these businesses do fail, is that they don't have a plan. And if they do, it's probably not a real plan. They probably just gave it to the bank and was like, yep, this is my business plan.
In closing, I want you to give a piece of advice to the treasurer, to the current and the coming one, or the shadow, and both sides,
right?
Because you're fair. What should be the tax policy on the table to be considered for the next budget to be planned next year? What's the tax policy they should be evaluating right now or thinking about, both treasurer and the shadow?
I think strong consideration needs to be given to GST. There has to be a very strong consideration, as opposed to reintroducing new taxes. I think we first need to look at the taxes we've got, specifically GST. And I think if they're worried about revenue raising, but equally worried about productivity, we'll look at an efficient tax, and that's GST. So my advice will be focus on GST and look at opportunities to use that tax to resolve some of the issues that they're facing. Do not introduce any more taxes. There's no need. We've already got too many taxes. The system is too complex as it is, and it's keeping me in a job, which is great, and I love that. But we don't need any more taxes, and we shouldn't be penalising people for doing well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.